Now what will it be? Death or exile?
Like a bolt of lightning out of the night, speak our name, and with that, let our powers flow through you. This is the Exiles Network, and we are the Film Exiles. Thank you all for joining us on this journey into magic and adventure as we traverse the universal divide between myth and mankind to bring you our review of the newest entry in the pantheon of DC Comics big screen adaptations with director David F. Sandberg's new film, Shazam. I will be your wizarding guide across this landscape of discovery, and you can call me Gray. With me on this magic carpet ride is the strong right hand of justice, the man called James, and the sorcerer, one Brandon Valenza. And joining us tonight is a special guest, one of our patrons, our first to be exact, the one called Heyward. Grab your runestones, set your hexes, and get cozy with your familiars. We're flying to the Rock of Eternity and back with the champion of champions, the original Captain Marvel himself, Shazam, right here on the Film Exiles podcast. Hey guys, how's everybody doing tonight? Everybody speak your names and let everybody hear your voices.
Hey everybody, it's James here. I was waiting to see if somebody else would go first.
James, you beat me to it. This is Heyward, so
hey man, how's it going? You know what? It's a pleasure to meet you.
Kansas.
Good to meet you guys. We're having some good discussion prior.
Oh yeah.
So.
Oh yeah, you guys. I know that the recording isn't going to pick all that up. Woo man, we had a really good talk before you guys came in, and you probably should have all been here for that, but you weren't. So, yeah. So I mean, did everybody go? Who went out and saw it? Like saw Shazam the night of. Who saw it the first night? Who saw preview night?
Anybody? I saw it last Tuesday.
Okay.
I saw it on Thursday, just before, like the pre-screening shows before midnight.
Yep.
I went to the 1-2-3 weeks ago, whatever, for the early screenings.
Nice. My wife and I went out and saw it on Friday night. It had been a particularly long week, and it was like this. It was this thing where it was like, okay, we're both exhausted. Our weeks have sucked. It's either this or Pet Sematary. Like, how bad do you really want to sleep tonight? It's like, okay, I think we're going to go see Shazam.
I feel like that's probably the best, especially if you've had a hard week. The last thing you want to go see is a movie about dead children.
Sometimes dead is better.
Oh, I love that performance in the original.
Oh yeah. Well, okay, so let's get into this with a quick history lesson. Okay, the character Shazam, as we know it, first debuted in 1940 in the pages of Whiz Comics #2 as part of an editorial edict from Fawcett Comics executive director Ralph Daig to create a new character in the style of the superhero characters that were quickly becoming popular. Daig recruited writer Bill Parker and artist C.C. Beck, and the result was Captain Marvel, who, with his magically derived powers and kid alter ego and young orphan Billy Batson, quickly became the most popular comic book character of his day, outselling both Batman and Superman well into the 1940s. Unfortunately, time and the tides of culture, not to mention a nasty copyright infringement suit brought on by national publications, who we now know as DC Comics, were not kind, as the Marvel character fell out of favor in the public eye and was all but dead by about 1953. DC Comics licensed the character and rechristened it Shazam to avoid its own lawsuit with Marvel Comics in 1973 and brought it into their universe of characters, though he never really found long-standing popularity again, even with initially successful relaunches in the early and mid-80s, 90s, and into the 2000s. The character was licensed for film development in the early 2000s by New Line Cinema, not Warner Brothers directly, and went through a long development process and a number of different writers before director Sandberg and writer Henry Gayden managed to crack the film and get it going in 2017. So the movie was released in April 2019, and the film stars Zachary Levi as the main hero, with Asher Angel as his young alter ego. The film also stars Mark Strong, Jaimin Hanzhou, and Jack Dylan Grazer. So what were your guys' initial expectations going into the film, and what were your first impressions of the movie? Heyward, why don't you start it off?
Well, my expectations are very high because, first of all, I'm a diehard DC fan. I've been a DC fan since 1987. I was a DC fan even before that with Super Friends when I was a kid and whatnot. And I've been a huge DC fan since 1987 with John Byrne's Man of Steel. So, this whole Superman rebirth after Crisis on Infinite Earths. So, but as a little boy, even as like 2-3 years old, I have just great memories of something. And Shazam, rather the original Captain Marvel, not this Captain Boring thing that's going on with the MCU, but the original Captain Marvel was one of the first superheroes that really impacted me. Obviously there are some others. So the 1974 TV show that was on CBS that Filmation did, that they were also responsible for He-Man later on, really meant a lot to me as a child. And if you watch it nowadays, it's a really good show. It's corny, but, there's some good things in it about, making good choices for your life, that kind of thing. There's not really anything like it on TV right now. And it is corny, obviously, but it does have a lot of substance to these shows, and it tackles things that I don't think had really been tackled before, except maybe on Mod Squad or something. It was like drug addiction, teenagers stealing cars, things like that. I mean, it tackled some interesting things as far as, juvenile delinquency and dysfunctional things like that. But at any rate, I have been a Shazam, or I'm going to refer to him as, DC's Captain Marvel fan for a long time. And there was an animated show in 1981 that I watched too as a child and whatnot. And then I've also seen the serial, Captain Marvel serial, Republic serial, 1941, which is actually.
Thank you for clearing that up, because I got in my head this image of you sitting down eating a bowl of Captain Marvel cereal.
Sounds delicious.
No, but I mean, I'm just into DC, guys. So, I mean, DC films, I'm a huge fan of it. Man of Steel is a masterpiece. BVS Ultimate is a masterpiece. I have great respect for Zack Snyder, which is the top filmmaker right now, in filmmaking, in my opinion. And, so my expectations were high about this. What I'm trying to say is this movie was a dream movie for me. Okay. It was something that I had always wanted to see on the screen. And I was like, this is never going to happen. I'll never get to see, the original Captain Marvel Shazam on the screen ever. It's not, it won't happen. And then I started hearing that the movie was in development, since, several years ago, about, 11 years ago now, or even before that. And I was like, well, this might be a possibility. Maybe this movie is going to actually get made. And, so this was a dream movie for me. My expectations were high. I've seen Lights Out. I've seen, Annabelle Creation, David Sandberg's movies. The guy is a very talented filmmaker. He knows how to make what I would call, so to speak, a tight film. Tight meaning, well directed, well edited, good performances, varying tones, tons of substance, ethics in his movies, so to speak. And so my expectations were high for this movie. And I expected it to be, really good. So my initial impressions, I think this movie's really good. And some people may not think that. And for some people, that's kind of strange if I would say that, because I'm such a huge Zack Snyder fan. But I thought this movie was really good. I thought it had varying tones to it. I thought it was well directed. I thought it was well edited, very well edited, which is a rarity nowadays to see a movie that's well edited.
Very true.
And I thought also, that everything worked in it. The comedy, I'm not really big on comedy. I like slapstick and whatnot, but I'm not one, to have a lot of humor in my films. I'm kind of old school filmmaking when it comes to humor in movies. I like, I like sarcasm. I like wit, that kind of thing. But to me, the humor worked in this movie. I felt it wasn't forced. I felt it was like natural or situational comedy, as it's been, dubbed. But for me, the humor worked. I thought it had varying tones. And I was very surprised that this movie was just dark and scary. There were a lot of dark and scary things in this movie. And, although I think Sandberg held back a little bit and the studio probably, pushed him to hold back a little bit. He still had a lot of dark and scary stuff in it. And I thought that the two biggest things that I could take away from this movie is it reminded me of an Amblin movie, a Steven Spielberg kind of movie.
Sure.
As far as the vibe and everything that he was going for. And I also felt like that Sam Raimi's Spider-Man had a big influence on this film, as well as Drag Me to Hell, one of Raimi's other movies. Not quite as dark as that, but I could definitely feel a Sam Raimi vibe, I thought, in these movies, which I highly respect Sam Raimi. The guy can make anything, and it's a shame that he's basically semi-retired now.
Okay.
But so that was my impressions. I wouldn't say this is a really strong, really good movie. It's kind of more of a solid or, weak to solid kind of really good movie. I use a 4-star scale. I would give it, a weak 3.5 stars, but I wouldn't give it out of 4. But I wouldn't get, it could easily be a 3-star movie. It's not a masterpiece, by any stretch.
Okay.
After I hear other people talk about it and whatnot, I can see, some things that, they maybe, I would disagree with it, but I can see where some people have criticism of
Sure.
it, is what I was saying. But
Sure.
To me, movie making is not a subjective thing. It's an objective thing. It was well directed. It was well written. It was well edited. I thought the score was good, even though it was more reminiscent of something like Bill Conti's Masters of the Universe.
Pump the brakes there. Pump the brakes there, buddy. You're starting to get ahead of yourself. We'll get to all that.
But anyway, I thought it was a really good movie. So.
All right, cool. All right. Well, James, why don't you go ahead and give us your expectations and initial impressions?
Yeah, sure. So my expectations were, I guess, I would describe it as being a bit neutral. I didn't necessarily have too many expectations on the movie, not because of sort of the direction that DC had been heading lately after the whole, BVS fiasco, jail fiasco,
Sure,
but more in terms of I knew who the character was, but not to any sort of professional degree. So, Heyward, if you asked me if I knew who Shazam is, I'd be like, of course. And you'd ask me, do you know who his alter ego is? I'd say, of course. But then beyond that, if you said, who are some of his villains? I'd be like, well, there's Black Adam. And then you say, okay. And then I'd be like, Black Adam.
Well, I'm not an expert, dude. So,
but to say that, I had any sort of stock in the character, I'd be lying, right? I thought it was cool that it was DC. I do have the animated movie there, but it's on my shelf, but I haven't even gotten around to watching it.
Oh, that's really good, dude. It's really good.
So yeah, I should be watching it. So I was aware of the Serial TV show back in the olden days, and stuff like that. So my expectations weren't huge. I know I just said it had nothing to do with it, but I do also feel like maybe my expectations were a little low just because I don't like what necessarily the direction that DC's heading compared to where it was before. So, but I think in some ways I didn't judge this movie as harshly because it was on the original docket of films to be released. And in fact, it released actually on time, right?
That's right.
Like when they first released that big that slate back when BVS was in production, right? When they finally announced JL1, JL2, and all that stuff. So I don't think I judged it that harshly on those terms. Now, when I started seeing the trailers, the movie was filmed in Toronto, right? So that's about 4 hours away from where I live. There is a sense of cheapness that comes with filming in Canadian cities that I find. I don't know. I know. I'm ragging on my own. I'm ragging on my own country, right?
I'd like to apologize to the people of Canada for our recent comments.
But it's like one of those things, when you watch shows, for example, like the X-Files, right? And it's supposed to be Washington, D.C., but they're filming in Vancouver, right? And you're like, this is clearly not. And so I'd be watching the film or even the trailers, and I'd be like, "This isn't Philadelphia. This is downtown Toronto."
Didn't Highlander start all that like filming in Canada? It seems like they were one of the first TV
show. A lot of U.S. sort of sci-fi based shows film in Vancouver, like a Stargate, X-Files, all the CW shows, right?
Yep.
So there's just something a little exhausting about watching Canadian cities filling in for like New York or Philadelphia, right? But this movie did plenty of use of many sweeping shots of the Philadelphia skyline to try to fool you that it was taking place in the US. But like I said, my expectations were, if I were going to be honest, neutral, right?
Right.
So my initial impressions, I've only seen it once. So my impressions may change as I watch it a second or third time. Sure. I think for that happens to us a lot, right? Even when we bring it back to BVS, I didn't love it at first. I was like, "What the fuck did I just watch?" I didn't hate it.
Same here. Like, jarring, man.
Exactly, because they in some ways Zach subverted our expectations in terms of what we were expecting. So I'm going to be watching. I don't know if I'll go see it again in theaters, but I'll be watching them. I'll be buying it on 4K and watching it a couple of more times, and perhaps my opinion will change on it. So, the movie overall, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it, but I was just sort of lukewarm on it. I felt that there were aspects of the movie that I really loved, and there were aspects of the movie that I could completely do without, if that makes any sense, right?
No, it makes perfect sense.
So in that regards, I was well entertained, but at this point, other than a couple of really shining moments in the film, I think Zachary Levi, is it Levi or Levi?
I think it's Levi.
Levi?
Yes, it seems like it's Levi, whatever.
So he was phenomenal in the role. Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Right? One of the small aspects, and I know we're going to be getting into stuff later, is I love improv in film. I did improv when I went to university. I took theater. But sometimes in movies, I find that the improv goes on just a little bit too long in scenes. Mm-hmm. And you can tell that they didn't know what to do with a scene, or they're just like, okay, well, we'll throw this aspect of the script out and we'll just improv. And it just goes on just a little bit too long that it sort of irks me the wrong way. I felt that there was a little bit of that, especially with some of the Freddy and Shazam scenes, or some of the Freddy and family scenes when they have to improvise as to why they're coming home late, or why there's a big ass hole in the door, or sorry, in the roof, right? When some electricity comes through, right? So, and like Heyward said, I felt that aspects of the soundtrack were a little bit uninspired. So. Okay. I don't feel anything too memorable in terms of the soundtrack, but like I said, I didn't hate the movie, and I do look forward to seeing it again and sort of reevaluating it under, veteran eyes. Not with your
expectations already out of the way.
Exactly. So I look forward to seeing it in that aspect and sort of giving it a re-review down the line.
All right, perfectly fair. All right, Brandon, why don't you hit us with your expectations and impressions?
So very much in line with James. I didn't grow up on Shazam. I was Superman growing up. I wore my Superman outfit to take out the trash to show people how awesome I was.
Awesome.
And you are a fucking legend.
You're in my camp, bro. You're in my camp.
I had the blow up floaties as muscles, and they still look better than Shazam's suit.
And when I go to the gym, I put on those blow-up floaties too, buddy. I just make sure to wear a big-ass sweater so that people aren't...
Oh, absolutely.
Or people aren't...
So I'm familiar with Shazam at a surface level. I know him from all the animated movies. I know him little bits from comics growing up, but it wasn't anything that I really read. He came off as a carbon copy of Superman, but without any level of maturity. And so that was fine. I didn't have a ton of expectations, but I love David Sandberg, so I was like, you know what? I'm going to give it some credit. I love Zachary Levi ever since watching Chuck. I watched Chuck through its whole run, and I fucking love Chuck. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of elements. Obviously, Mark Strong. I love Mark Strong, but his track record as a DC villain isn't awesome. So that was iffy. But I was like, hey, he'll get it right the second time. There's no way that he gets it wrong again. And even he didn't get it wrong in Green Lantern. The movie did, but.
Good point.
I do have to preface that yes, I was heavily deep rooted in Zach's story. I love other aspects. I don't only love Zack Snyder. I fucking love Christopher Reeves growing up. I loved Tim Burton.
Same here.
Movies. I just love DC movies. I love Superman Returns. I don't care what anyone else thinks. Kevin Spacey's fantastic in it. Brandon Routh was great. I love Superman Returns. So I just want
that plane scene is legendary. I don't like the movie very much.
Let me
but
tell you,
that scene.
If Henry Cavill was in Superman Returns, that movie would be a lot better. I can tell you that for a fact.
You know what? Really, if you swap.
All right. Okay, guys, come on. Let's rate it in.
Back on task.
I like Brandon Routh. I'm not saying he did a bad job. It's a preposterous movie about Superman. I mean, Superman will never leave the Earth for 5 years. And I mean, I love the movie. I like the movie too. I'm not disagreeing with you. I think it's a strong 3.5 star movie, but it's preposterous.
So, I was kind of coming in this with somewhat clear expectations, but not very high hopes because I really didn't enjoy Aquaman. It's great if you watch it on mute, but other than that, it's pretty worthless. So I didn't have high hopes, and I went to the 2-week early screening. I almost talked myself out of it. When one of the reviewers that I follow online said, my 9-year-old loved it, you'll love it too. And I was like, oh, fuck. Because I don't have kids. I don't give a shit what kids think about movies. It's what I think. And throughout the movie, every once in a while, somebody would look over at me to see if I was having as much fun as they were. And they could tell I was not.
Oof.
It felt like a Nickelodeon movie with a bigger budget. It's nonstop comedy. It's lots of skits all stitched together by a serviceable plot. Zachary Levi is fine, but I never felt that him and his younger self, Asher Angel, were ever the same person. And so walking out of it, the only thing
that's a good point.
The only thing I could say about the movie before we get to a fuller review of it is I enjoyed the parts without superheroes more than I did with them, and I shouldn't feel that way when you walk out of a DC movie. Everything just felt like it was Nickelodeon or CW level, which makes sense since they filmed it in Canada.
Can I just interject? I just want to know if anybody else felt like this. I felt the character, just based off of the games I played, like Injustice and knowing about Black Adam and stuff like that, and the fact that, you have the gods, Hercules, Solomon, Zeus, and all that stuff. I felt like I was expecting the mythology of the character to be bigger or more,
or there at all.
Yeah. Am I alone in that?
There was nothing there.
Yeah, they really they underplayed those aspects. I think because they,
without a doubt.
Well, there had to have been a choice made at some point. What is the story that you're going to tell? Are you going to tell the mythological story about Shazam and how this kid comes to deal with, these powers that he has, or are you going to tell the story about the kid and the family? And I don't think they were able to, I don't know if they were able to actually ever get to the point where they were mixing the two of those things together, because for the most part, and this is getting ahead of ourselves, but for the most part, I felt that the kind of like superhero plot aspect of the film really kind of got cut down to the bare minimum so they could focus on first Freddie and Billy playing with the Shazam powers, and then making sure that they had enough time to build the family aspect of it. And that's fine. That's the story that they wanted to tell. And I think that's what's resonating with a lot of people, is this idea that, oh yeah, it's a superhero movie, but it's not just full of plot exposition and action scenes. There's this other thing going on. And that's perfectly cool, like you said, for like a TV series or something like that. But I think there should be a better blend of it, especially when you're dealing with a character that has as much going on as Captain Marvel does.
Yeah. And you kind of hit it on the head there with They wanted to tell one story or another. But, I mean, the series is littered. DC is littered with being able to set up a bigger story and then enter into the small one for now. People are talking so high on the history lesson, and I felt there wasn't a history lesson. There was a 30-second clip about the 7 deadly sins, but they never once said, who is Shazam? Where does he come from? What is the power? They mentioned a couple of the gods, and people are like, oh, I saw Clash of the Titans once. That makes sense. Yeah. So, you don't get any of that history and what makes them gods. No. And what I love about Man of Steel and BVS is these characters are fucking gods. Even Batman is a god, but Wonder Woman and Superman are gods, and Shazam is literally a fucking god. And they never once talked about it. There was no point in him being Shazam. Nobody knew who he was. Shazam didn't know who he was.
Yeah, that's the whole point. What you just said is the whole point of the movie. Shazam does not know who he is. And what this movie is about foster care, guys. That's what it's about. I was a former foster care trainer, and they nailed everything about foster care.
Oh, I don't disagree with that one.
That's what it's about. It's a human interest movie. That's what they went for. They had a choice, do mythology or do human interest. And, and with all this pressure from the media and these sycophant reviewers, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They went for the human interest story totally, which was also Annabelle Creation was kind of a human interest story too, about abandoned kids.
Well, no, that let's go ahead and let's get into all that. Let's do screenplay, let's do plot, characters. Let's get into all that and start talking about what do you guys think of the construction of the whole thing. Now you Heyward, you started talking about, you had the focused on the human interest aspect of the story. Do you feel that there was maybe too much of a conscious effort to kind of say, okay, yes, we're making a quote unquote superhero movie, but we know we've looked through all the analytics and people don't really like this and they don't really like that. So let's go ahead and we'll push a different angle and we'll use kind of like the superhero aspect as more as like a hook to get people in.
I think that definitely played into it. And I think we also know that Warner Brothers interferes with movies and they have agendas and so on and so forth. But, I think that the issue is this. Looking at Sandberg's movies, the other two that I've seen, they are about kids and they are about families. And this is about what this movie is about as well. It's about foster care. And having experience in this, I can tell you he nailed it. He nailed the foster parents as far as being good ones. He nailed their grief. He nailed their loss. He nailed even the character Darla, the little girl. She has an attachment disorder. She wants to hug all the time. That is a common thing that occurs. Part
of the abandonment thing.
Yeah, abandonment. All the different, Freddie, the kid that, has special needs and, is looking for attention all the time. That's what they went for. That's what Sandberg, I think, wanted to do as well. He just wanted to nail that aspect of grief, loss, insecurity, not knowing who you are. And he took it and he ran with it. And kind of the whole mythology about Captain Marvel and Shazam was left behind. It was all left behind. And I think he also wanted to grab, kind of the goofy craziness of the Golden Age comics, which are just off the wall nuts. I mean, they're really
is obviously what the younger crowd has been asking for out of DC.
Right.
Well, has it really been the younger crowd asking for it, or has that been the younger crowd asking for it, or has that been a certain segment of the older audience asking for it on their behalf?
Yes, both. I mean, if you've followed a single person on Twitter with a Spider-Man profile, you know that everybody in high school wants nonstop humor. They want all
or Captain Marvel now.
No, Captain Marvel wants no men in their movies.
That's true.
Yeah, all right.
And not saying anything on that. It's just it is a weird subculture when you look at any of these. Is even the young kids are gatekeeping the older people from being able to enjoy their movies and their heroes.
Right.
I think that in terms of separating the mythology and then going for a more family-based story was a decision made after the fact, simply because when I was at the Snyder Con, if you want to call it that, Zach basically said the reason why he really, was attracted to going to DC was the comparison to Greek mythology, right? These are the new heroes. This is the new era, but they can all be traced back to ancient Greek or, Greco-Roman archetypes, right?
Right.
But I feel like because this was Zachary Levi, that they decided to go with the family hook. And if they do go with the mythological hook, they're going to put that hook with the Black Adam movie.
You nailed it.
It's made.
Right. No, I think
because
so.
they know they can sell
that.
it on The Rock.
Do you think that was a decision that was made at the screenwriting stage, or do you think they did that like they shot all that stuff, or they shot a lot of that stuff and they went, man, maybe we should just kind of cut that out and reshape? Because there's a lot of people who say like a lot of you. So you think it was definitely done at the screenwriting stage?
I think it was done definitely before shooting, but I think when BVS was being made and they announced Shazam, there was probably a much bigger grounding and a much bigger mythological element to it.
Agreed.
Because that's the universe you play in. If you play in Snyder's toy box, he's got a lot of really awesome toys, and he's going to show you all of them, and he's going to share them with all of his friends. So there would have been a bigger aspect, and it probably would have had a little bit bigger budget.
And it probably would have made sense considering he was actually building some of those god characters into the films that he was working on. So it wouldn't have been this abstract concept. We would have been able to say, "Oh, look, no, we know Zeus and we know Achilles," and
Yeah, we've seen these characters
there's
before,
no
so
doubt.
they would have popped up.
There's no doubt that
At one point it would have been.
One point that would have had more stuff in it. I mean, they already explored and set all this stuff up in Wonder Woman too.
That's true.
I don't understand. I see you guys' tension and frustration with the situation, but I really think that reading some interviews by Sandberg, and it's hard to say because people are liars, but he said he wanted to make an Amblin movie, and that's what he made. He made an Amblin movie.
Yep.
So
it does seem a little bit. It does seem a little bit weird to me that that was. I don't know, that was kind of the approach that he took, especially considering, look, I don't generally, when I do an analysis, I don't come at an adaptation with this is what the source material is and this is how much this compares to this thing. But it does seem kind of strange that this is really, this film is primarily based on the Jeff Johns New 52 reboot of the character, but it feels nothing like that book. That book.
I've
never read it.
Is his name stripped from this movie? I can't remember if his name shows up or not.
He got
it's there.
Producer credit.
Okay.
He got an executive producer
His
credit.
production company made it too. Ghost, Ghost House or whatever the heck it's called.
The Jeff Johns run on the book was very, very clear that Billy Batson was, kind of a shitty kid, and it was not really, it was very, very different in tonality and very, very different in feel. So it feels like they took that material and then graft it on this other family friendly aspect where the book it's based on is really geared more towards the 15, 16, 17-year-old kind of age group. And this really kind of feels like it stretches down to the 9-year-old group.
Definitely. And I will agree that and I said it right at the beginning is, with the family aspect of it, I'm not contending that at all. And I said my favorite parts were the human elements, the parts without superheroes. I'm not from a foster family. I can't say I understand it, but they did do that well. And each of those characters had a pretty good personality, so I liked that. And I actually preferred Asher Angel over Zachary Levi as far as playing that character because Asher Angel was the runaway. He had the abandonment. He was the one telling
He was the emotional anchor.
He was, but as soon as he got in that red suit, none of that mattered.
Yeah.
Right.
It just right out the window. He turned right into a goofball, and that was.
I don't think that doesn't feel like something that happened at the screenplay stage. That sounds to me like something that happened once Zachary Levi got into the role.
I think that's the improvisation stage, and there is too much of a contrast between Shazam and Billy Batson. There's too much of a contrast. I totally agree with that.
I prefer Asher Angel's portrayal because he had some weight. behind everything he said. He had some angst behind him, but he had true sadness. And again, I understand that if I got powers, I'd probably act a little bit different. At least I'd probably be a little cockier, but my entire personality wouldn't change. And
I find it kind of interesting that as soon as all that happened, I mean, he's I don't know, because that wasn't fit, but he just completely stopped thinking about, anything having to do with his mom. Very, 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 very conveniently, they decide that that last woman that he looked for was the last one he was going to look for right before he got his powers.
I do want to kind of put a different spin on this, having been a foster care trainer, and I'm certainly not an expert or anything, but I'm just saying this, is that foster kids get confused sometimes and they put on masks. And so I think when he becomes the, classic Captain Marvel, Shazam, he is putting on a mask in a way, and he suddenly realizes, hey, I can do anything I want now. I'm an adult. And it's kind of a mask for him. So when he goes back to being Billy Batson, it's like, well, this is back to his normal life again, and he's not that guy anymore. With that being said, though, I thought there was way too much. There was not way too much, but a little too much contrast between, Asher's performance and Zachary's performance. Well, I thought there was too much contrast.
It's interesting that you bring that up because they did make a very specific point at a point in the movie where he literally says, this is what kids do. I'm not a kid anymore. And he goes off, and that's when he's doing the whole, the lightning with my hands thing. Do you feel that that's something that they maybe should have leaned into a little bit? Now, this is something that I really want to talk about with this kind of overall in terms of, how you target a movie like this. They were obviously they were trying to grab a younger audience with this film, but there's the potential there to really deal with some pretty weighty things. Not necessarily getting into really super dark territory or anything like that, but the things like that, like Darla and her attachment syndrome, or Billy with his abandonment issues and things like that. Do you think that they maybe should have put a little more emphasis on? And I'm talking not for the shock factor, but to actually kind of emphasize the family aspect of it and how important it is for them to come together at the end. Do you think that maybe they should have emphasized some of that a little bit more? I
really do. I think that they could have emphasized a little more, but I thought he nailed it. But here's the whole contrast. Here's the whole thing to me in a nutshell, is Warner Brothers and New Line Cinema from the beginning, going back to the development of this movie, wanted it to be like Big. And to me, that is the wrong template for Shazam and Captain Marvel. They made it work in the movie, and there's even a homage to it in the movie, with him walking on the, the keyboard and all that stuff. But it's like, I never felt like that was the way that they should go, but they felt for some reason that's the way they should market it. And going all the way back to the development stage in this movie, they really wanted to push that for some reason. Yeah. For me personally, I like Captain Marvel, classic Captain Marvel, that is a boy that turns into an adult superhero. That is what that is the way the character was intended to be. That's his roots. I feel like the character grew into that by the end of the movie somewhat, but at the same time, there wasn't enough of it. But, Jeff Johns didn't see it that way. He wanted to make him a big kid and all this other kind of stuff. And I'm fine with it, but I was, this being my dream movie, in one of my dream movies, I really wanted that to kind of be, to kind of see his character grow into more of an adult as a superhero. You see a little bit of that at the end of the movie when he's talking about, he zeroes in on envy being in, Dr. Savannah, but, it's not enough in my opinion. And
even if you go back to Big, which when I heard Big with superpowers, that actually was intriguing to me.
Well, see, that appealed to you. It did to me,
but it didn't work for me personally. But the issue is when you watch Big throughout the movie, Tom Hanks starts as a child and ends up as more adult-like. He has some dark moments. He comes to this realization that this is now his life, and he might have bigger responsibilities. He may not be able to go back to the way things were, and add some emotional weight.
That is true.
But
that is
never
true. I
happened
haven't seen that movie in years. That is a great point.
That's what I wanted. I wanted to see Zachary Levi play a big kid because Zachary Levi is a big kid. I love Zachary Levi.
That is who he is. That is correct.
But he never had any moment where he felt maybe I need to grow up a little bit, except for when he became a kid again. And then he grew up by growing down.
I agree with that. And
Interesting.
That's a good way to put it. And I also think that Sandberg wanted to make this a tribute to Amblin. And there's also another movie. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but it's Fred Decker's Monster Squad.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Very much like Shazam. And it's kind of an Amblin movie ripoff, so to speak, of the time. But it's a good movie. And I think that this is the kind of vibe that he was going for. And because of, all the other that's what makes the movie work. That's what makes it work.
The question is, was it his choice, or did the producers watch Spider-Man: Homecoming and say, "Let's do that"?
I don't.
That's kind of rough. That's kind of.
I don't think Spider-Man: Homecoming is an Amblin movie. I don't.
But it's
more of a
John Hughes movie.
There are things about it though. Somebody pointed out even the ending credit sequence of
that was
Shazam. Yeah, you pointed that out.
They played the Ramones. They had the same titles.
Yeah.
And
I understand what you're saying. There is a Spider-Man: Homecoming sort of, there's some scenes in there that are reminiscent of it, but to me, it's more of a the Goonies to me, or Ghostbusters, which is not an Amblin movie, but it's still a mix of horror and comedy and varying tones. So
again, it had its elements, but we all have our different opinions on whether or not Warner Brothers is trying to capitalize on what Marvel has done. And we saw it with Suicide Squad and them saying, hey, Guardians of the Galaxy had a ton of cool fucking music. Let's do that.
Yeah.
And we got a ton of great music used terribly in a movie, and over editing and choppiness and all this stuff is a mistake. And this movie felt like they said, let's kind of do something kind of like Spider-Man did and set this in high school and give him one friend that knows who he is and helps him along his way, and let's do this, and this, and then. Well,
this movie did a better job of exploring grief and loss than Homecoming.
But if you like with what I've explained as far as the character, the hero never growing up, Spider-Man grows up. Peter Parker grows up when he confronts Vulture, and has to choose. What he wants to be. And even when the building collapses on him and he's got to find his strength, there's serious moments in that, and he's brought to tears, but I never really felt any of that. So, there's pluses and minuses to both.
Well, I did when he visited his mom and she didn't want to have anything to do with him.
Well,
I thought that made me cry. Personally, I cry and I can cry at the drop of a hat. I shed no tears. I shed no tears for Spider-Man: Homecoming, man.
Now,
okay.
No,
I will say. So script-wise, I will go back. The one thing that I did walk out saying was I loved the duality of the scene, where at the beginning you saw his point of view on what happened with his mom, and then you saw her point of view on what happened, and just the little differences in the exact same lines of dialogue. And he saw her as this perfect creature that loved him and would have never left him. And then when she was telling the story, she was exhausted and lost and didn't know what to do. And I loved that those two scenes side by side playing out almost exactly the same, except for the differences in line delivery that changed everything in those two scenes.
Oh, absolutely.
That's the heart of the movie right there. If those scenes weren't in that movie, it would not be as good as it is.
Right.
And I still think, though, that I do think Sandberg was not forced to make an Amblin movie. I think this is what he wanted to do, and this was the best formula that he could come up with to make it all work. So it wouldn't seem too corny, or it wouldn't seem, too, obviously they weren't going to go in the mythological direction. So, he had to put some substance in the movie, and this was the way to do it. So I think he looked at it and said, well, here are my templates. I want to put some Sam Raimi kind of horror stuff in it. And to me, it has more in common with the original Spider-Man than Homecoming.
Sure.
That's just my opinion.
Just means like from the kind of the teen angle, and like I said, with the end credits and the music.
Sure.
And then even the mid credit scene, which, spoiler alert, because I know that's a big deal right now on Twitter. spoiler alert, but the mid-credit scene is the villain in prison talking to the next future villain, which I can't say that I understand that.
Yeah, you make some good points.
There's a lot of similarities. I'm not saying it's ripping off. I'm not saying that it does a terrible job of copying anything of it, but there's some similarities in the style of movie they were trying to make. I think Homecoming.
Let me ask you this question: do you like Homecoming?
Yeah.
Do you like that movie?
Yeah.
I like it. I like it too, but to me, it's mediocre. It's got shoddy editing and shoddy cinematography.
So that brings up
first and foremost, it's a Marvel.
This brings up a question that I really want to ask. Looking at the slate of DC films. Now here's the weird thing: is we know that this was a film that was announced earlier on in the slate of films before there was any sort of quote unquote course correction in the franchise or anything like that. So this film was always meant to come out when it was meant to come out. But the other things that have happened around it kind of changed the context of, or kind of like asked me to look at the context of the film as it actually appeared. And the question I want to ask is, you look at where the franchises and where this portion of the film industry is, these quote unquote superhero films or comic book films. Look at where they are now with this long running kind of darker Marvel storyline running, the big shift that's happened in DC. This particular movie, why this movie the way that it is, and why now? James, what do you think is the thought process behind it? Do you think that this was that they looked at this and went, this is the perfect time to put out a movie that's more kid friendly, or did it just happen to work out that way with everything else going on?
I was going to say, I think it just happened to work out the way it is, because the thing is, the movie was scheduled for April 2019. And I think when they went back and reevaluated the slate and were like, okay, guys, we need to, at the time, I'm sure they were then going to chase the Marvel formula, right?
Right.
And I know, I believe now they've changed their tune, knowing that wasn't the right thing to do. I think it just came up to the point they were looking at the movies and they said, okay, we're going to put these movies on hold. How about Shazam? They're like, well, Shazam is actually the exact kind of movie we're looking to make. So we're going to keep that there and sort of keep that lightheartedness and stuff like that, because I do believe, I know we discussed about, separating the mythological and going for a more character and family related story. I still think that at that time, Jeff Johns and Zach were working together in unison in a friendly way. And I think they were still going to go with that Jeff Johns version of the character, because it's, the main complaint was that, DC, it's, it's too dark, it's too dark, it's too dark. But we all know through conversations with Chris Terrio and other people that the movies were eventually going to get a bit lighter, right? Superman was eventually going to sort of go through his trials and tribulations and become like the Superman that all these people keep wanting, right? We see the deleted scene where he sees Alfred and he's a little bit more of a classical type, classical in terms of the 70s version of Superman, that it seems that that's all these bloggers have ever seen and never read a fucking comic. But, but you have these, you could tell when they hired James Wan, Rick for The Flash, and now, Andy for this, that they were going to be respecting specific director visions. And that's why we've had so many directors fall out, because they were going to give them sort of, a tabula rasa, carte blanche or whatever you want to call it, as directors, right? And then every time, write your own shit, here's sort of a guideline in terms of where the overarching narrative is going to go or stay or whatever, but do your own thing. And then each time somebody dropped out. Why? Because Jeff Johns was trying to put his finger in the fucking pie. I think that the movie just happened to be it was always going to be there, and it just happened to be at a perfect time, 2 years out from release date, that they could still comfortably keep it in its release slot, and that it was it wasn't like, crap, the movie's coming out, it's scheduled to come out in 8 months, we still haven't done anything, let's scrap it. It was, 2 years out. We got time. This is the exact type of movie we want to make that in some ways does chase the Marvel formula, but is still going to be the movie that they were at least more or less setting out to make.
Okay. Well, what do you think, Brandon? You agree, disagree with that?
I think that it was absolutely changed from what it was originally going to be. Again, I definitely feel that it was probably going to have a lighter side to it because Shazam has a lighter side, and that's fine. But I definitely think that there would have been more mythology behind it. It would have helped build the world that Zach was setting up. It would have felt congruent to that world, and that would have been fantastic, or marvelous. Shazam started filming at the end of January 2018, well after the shitstorm of Justice League had already happened. So it absolutely went through some massive changes, probably before Justice League even came out, because at that point they knew they were going to lose on Justice League, but they thought they might still have something on Aquaman. And I actually think that the changes made to Aquaman are what gave them the confidence to change Justice League. And in the end, just say, fuck it, never mind, we'll just continue after.
I can definitely see that.
But to me, this was made after Justice League, and I think even just from November, December, January, 3 months to do a rewrite is more time than Suicide Squad had to do a write.
That's
so
true.
They can change the story and say, let's simplify it. Let's take out all the God elements that might scare off kids, that might leave them wondering what they just saw. Let's take it down. Let's make it more of a family movie. Let's shrink the budget a little bit. My guess is it probably wasn't originally an $80-90 million movie. It was probably a bit more because most comic book
probably
movies
120 or 150.
I would say probably closer to 120.
Yeah,
a lot of the rags or whatever trades are saying it cost $90 million. That's what they're
80
saying.
or 90. Yeah.
Originally,
I mean, Wikipedia says 100, and Box Off Mojo says 100, but I don't believe that. All the trades are saying 90.
Yeah, so. I mean, either way, when I say 90 and somebody corrects me and say, "Hey, it was 80." It's like it's $10 million.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter, man. And it's got a ton. It's got a ton of product placement in the movie too. So I mean, that offsets a lot of it.
Yeah, but so I think that it was definitely shrunk down, and they wanted to make something that was going to get what Marvel attracts, which is these young kids that are in high school that are going to go with 10 of their friends and talk about how funny it was and how much fun they had. And I'm not anti-fun. But I think they wanted that audience, and we know DC has been after Marvel's audience for years, and I think they saw that approach and they turned it into what it is now. Right. And for some people, that's a great thing, and for some people who are still feel betrayed by what came before, I think that is a bad thing. So for me, I felt that was a bad change. I want something with a bit more scale if we're talking about heroes and gods. I definitely feel that it was changed after the Justice League debacle.
Sure.
Oh, for sure. And I think that just goes back to what I was saying earlier, is that this was the one movie they felt they could keep in the slate and get that movie they were looking for.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like you have to CGI the actor's face or anything. I mean, you can go in there, you can change little things, you can make alterations, you can do some ad-libbing, but it's a small story. It does.
Yeah, you could just cut the character's face clean right off.
Yeah, right. I mean, who would do that? Give them a red belt while you're at it.
Yeah.
Well, you do that when both sides are greedy and they can't get something done.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he filmed it. There's that picture last year of him on set.
Yeah.
It was like a shadow.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Now they're lying about it. I mean, that's what I heard, is that he filmed the cameo, so now they canned it because they're trying to put leverage on, Cavill. They're trying to say, look, Superman is the issue here, not you.
Yeah.
Well, what I read was that he's got a deal for appearances. A lot of times they don't necessarily specify how much of an appearance or how big an impact he has to have. So if he's got a deal where it's like, I'm just going to throw out a number. Let's say it's like, $12 million for 6 appearances. That's his contract. If he shows up in this movie for 30 seconds, that's the most expensive 30 seconds.
There you go. It's a money issue.
That's right. It depends what the contract is, because it's the exact same situation where Chris Evans showed up in the Thor: The Dark World, and it didn't count as one of his appearances. So they paid him a sum of money on the side, and it didn't count as one of his contract appearances.
Interesting.
Here's the thing.
Well, I hope the snap erases that movie, because it's not good.
Here's the thing. That's my favorite Thor movie. I actually really like The Dark World.
I don't know how, man.
You know what? It's better than Thor Ragnarok.
100% better.
Thor Ragnarok is the first hour is abysmal. But anyway,
we could fill a whole other podcast with that.
But
yeah.
So here's when you look at a contract. If they figured out his contract, they would say, okay, we're going to do a 3-movie deal with you for $20 million a movie or whatever it was going to be. And then we will have appearance value where if you make an appearance for a certain number of minutes, you will get $500,000 or something like that. Mm-hmm. If you have a contract with your biggest superhero, this movie does not count against your contract. You get paid on the side. Otherwise, what happens is they put him in this movie. This is the last movie on his contract, which is supposed to be Justice League 2. Mm-hmm. You have to pay him $20 million for 30 seconds. That tells me right there.
Appearance.
It's a money issue, man. It's always
it is a money issue, but that tells me right there is no contract in place. They did not want to use his last appearance for this movie because they don't have any other appearances worked out. Mm-hmm. However, I agree with his standpoint. They cut almost all of his dialogue from BVS, and then I'm a straight man, but they fucked up a beautiful face in Justice League. And he went on the entire press tour for Fallout and had to hold up a cardboard cutout over his face as a joke to all the bloggers. I would be on the sideline saying, no, you're going to give me everything I fucking want and creative control, and I'm going to bring in the director that I want. I'm going to have a say-so over this movie because I'm not going to be caught in that mess again.
Right.
I would be all in favor of that, but it doesn't work that way, man.
It doesn't work that way.
He's not that kind of a superstar, man.
But that tells me that they don't have a contract, and that this movie was...
You're right about that.
They don't have a contract. And to me, them doing this and people still celebrating that scene tells Warner Brothers, we don't need Henry Cavill. Put somebody in that suit and the fans will be happy.
Yeah, he's lost all leverage, man. He needs to give in my opinion.
I'm
he
actually
needs to give in.
Sorry to I'll end this tangent. I'm fine with him leaving.
I'm fine with him leaving too, but he's the best Superman ever.
I love his Superman.
He has no leverage, man.
I would watch him for the rest of my life as Superman, but as just like every other actor, he signed on for a particular story. He's not going to be the Superman I love anymore. Nope. He's going to have to be nostalgia-driven, jokey, pushing up his glasses and saying, by golly shucks, the whole time. He's going to have to be a goofball. And that's not the Superman I want to see him being.
And remember, look both ways before you cross the street.
Yeah.
Well, okay.
Well, I don't know about that, but we'll see. We'll see. I'm not sure about that just yet.
All right.
But.
So we've touched upon, this issue of the movie being, pretty squarely aimed towards a younger age group. We've waffled a little bit on how deep we think that necessarily goes. When you've got a movie like this, now they've revealed today that Henry Gayden, the screenwriter, he's already on board to do a sequel, and the word is that they want to get a sequel into production before the kids that they've cast for these parts start to get too old. Now I think that you can work. Yeah, I think you can work around that. But here's kind of the question I have. It's not really about the actors because, to a certain degree, I think we are, despite what people say, we're used to actors being recast and certainly younger actors, you can get away with it. But here's the question about the audience. Okay, right now this movie, and this was kind of like what happened with the Harry Potter films. Right now this movie is targeting an audience, let's say between the ages of 9 and 14. That's their main target group that they want. Now they're going to make a sequel. That sequel is going to take probably 2 years to make. So your 9-year-olds are now going to be 11-year-olds, and your 14-year-olds are now going to be 16-year-olds, and they may not be as interested anymore. Do you start shifting the material to try to age up with the group that you grabbed with the first film? Or do you just kind of look at it and say, you know what, there's always going to be another group of 9-year-olds. Let's just keep firing away at that same segment. We'll just keep trying to hit that same target every single time.
That's an interesting question. I don't know what the answer is per se. I think it's according to whatever Sandberg feels like is best for the situation, but I don't know exactly what their plans are with this situation. I mean, clearly they're betting that they're going with Shazam regardless of whatever the money makes, whatever the movie makes, and it's going to make a lot. It's not going to do $1 billion, obviously, I don't think, but it's going to make a lot of money, and they're going forward with it. And I do think The Rock is still involved. He's an executive producer on this movie, and he just released a video talking about Black Adam. So there's going to be a prequel, and Hawkman is supposed to be in it. But I don't know what they're going to do in regards to that. I guess they'll have to play up the angle of the whole Shazam family being in the movie, because obviously they've put them in the movie, so that's the angle that they're going to go with. I would imagine is not just focus on Billy Batson. This was Billy Batson's movie, but the rest of the next movie is going to be the Shazam family, and what they do to battle against Sivana and what is it, Mr. Me? I think
Mr. Mind.
Mr. Mind, yeah. So, see, I told you I'm not an expert on Captain Marvel, but at any rate, I think that's the direction that they're going to go with. I think this movie was the perfect storm for Warner Brothers. It was the perfect storm that they needed. I do think that Big was always in the picture. It's been in development for years and years and years. This movie goes all the way back, before Superman Returns. So, I mean, this was something that they had been wanting to make. They just needed the right director to come along. It has the MCU influence that I debate this with people all the time. You know what, guys? The MCU does not own humor. They don't own humor. They don't, own, having a good time at the movies. And I thought this movie was more of an Amblin movie than an MCU movie. I really did. It felt like that. It didn't feel like an MCU ripoff to me. And I think that it'll be interesting to see in the sequel. Obviously, I think it's going to be about the Shazam family and whatever, revenge Sivana wants or something along those lines. And it's not going to be about Billy Batson anymore. I would imagine that they're going to shift some towards Mary Marvel because of the money shows, the box office returns is showing that people want female heroes. So, and Darla, so that's my take on it.
All right. Well, who else? What do you guys think? Do you let these characters grow up and grow with the audience that's coming into this film, or is this a Nickelodeon thing where you're just like, nope, we know our target is the 9-year-olds. There's always going to be more 9-year-olds. Where do you guys stand on that?
I think it's going to boil down to their plans for Superman. I think that if they're going to use this for now as a pseudo replacement for Superman for the time being, while they're working on what the hell to even do with him, I think they will grow up the movie a little bit. Maybe, it's not going to go Man of Steel. It's not going to get really deep in its themes.
Sure.
But I do think that, the characters and the actors are going to be growing up. So I do think that the script will probably grow up a little bit. The budget is definitely going to go up a little bit. They're not going to make it for 90 million. Now it will be 120 to 140 million. So they're going to be able to get bigger things. And realistically, Black Adam is a pretty dark character. You're probably going to need to segue into the darkness of Black Adam at least a little bit, because the childlike actor that Shazam was in this movie is not going to be able to hold toe to toe without a level of maturity with Black Adam. He'll just get destroyed.
Absolutely.
Good point. That's a really good point.
James, what do you think?
I think they're just sort of going to play it by ear right now. I think, if you look at stuff like Stranger Things, from season 1 to season 2, the change isn't that big, but if you've seen the trailer to season 3, like those kids are getting old,
and they're really playing into that angle too.
I think Ben Wolfhard had a beard.
But they and I feel like depending on how fast the kids are growing up, you know, like kids like Darla, you're gonna have the biggest, you know, shock in terms of how much she ages in 2 years versus, for example, the actress who played Mary, right? Because she's already 18 in real life. Right. So going 18 to 20 is not a big deal, but going, you know, 10 to 13, that's a huge deal.
Yeah.
Sure.
Right. So I think they'll do one more where they're kids. And I think they'll do maybe if it does get to a trilogy, then, you know, they'll have them being, you know, a bit older. You know, you'll have Billy Batson, maybe, you know, 20 or 21, because even at that point, you're still struggling with the responsibility of your powers versus the fact that even at 20 or 21, like you're still a kid. Let's be real here, right? So I think the next movie, they'll sort of keep it the formula. Mm-hmm. Then after that, I think it changes.
I was actually a little surprised that they even bothered to cast another actress for
for Mary,
grown-up Mary Marvel.
Yeah, I was
40. Not age shaming anything or like that. But if everybody's supposed to be at the peak of their human perfection,
right?
And you're telling me that, you know, when you're 18, you're further away from your physical perfection than you were then like at 40. It was just, I just felt it weird. And the thing is, the actress who played the older Mary didn't look shockingly different.
No, she didn't.
I didn't think so either.
At first I was like,
I'm the one that says that the girl that plays Mary is pretty physically perfect. So.
Yeah, it's very that was a little.
I would expect them to play this up in the next movie and try to get a Mary Marvel spinoff. That would be one of my guesses. To me, that would be a smart move. But
the kind of build her up, give her a bigger role in the second one, and then spin her off.
No, that's what I'm saying. After the second movie. But here's the thing: is they got to greenlight this thing quick, and it looks like they are. I mean, they're already releasing things out.
They're already going. They're already bouldering forward with it.
Yeah, there was a news release today that they're getting Henry Gayden to return to script the movie.
I mean, Sandberg's coming back, the writer's coming back. You know, I mean, and they're going to get this going fast. But you know, and I'm happy about it because, like I said, it was a dream movie for me. So, but
you know, here's the thing, and this kind of gets down to the kind of ooey gooey center of the whole debate. Okay, that goes back to, you know, when Man of Steel was released, and I know we've talked a lot about, you know, Zack Snyder and Man of Steel, and we shouldn't have been, but there's a huge contrast between what was started with Man of Steel, even if you kind of stretch back a little bit to The Dark Knight and even to the first Iron Man, the original Iron Man, and to a certain degree, you know, those first 3 of the Marvel films, Iron Man, Incredible Hulk, and then Iron Man 2. There was definitely a push towards let's aim this at an older audience. Let's go more dramatic with it, which I think really hit a peak with BVS. And then it's kind of like everybody looked at that movie and went, "Holy shit, we have gone way too fucking far."
You hit that go back button.
Right.
I think it scared people because it hit on corruption so much.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, the whole and the thing about the media and how, you know, the rich can exploit and whatnot. And I think it hit too close to home.
Yeah.
As soon as
how good we are as people, how terrible we are as people.
Right.
People don't like to be reminded that we're pieces of shit. Right. And that's what's wrong with BVS is humanity is not a good place for immigrants and for aliens, and that's what they were approaching on. So maybe that was too dark for people to see that we're not really that bright and beautiful.
This gets into the question that I have, and it's the age old question here. Looking at all that we have there, and now looking at the response to the fan response to it. Started with Wonder Woman as they started to kind of blunt the edges. Aquaman with this. And to a degree, you could see that there was a very conscious shift in things in the Marvel films too. You know, when it comes down to it, you know, are superheroes just better overall when do they work better as a storytelling device when they're aimed more towards children? We can write these stories for our adult selves. We can tell these stories to our adult selves, but do they really have the proper impact if you have to, weigh them down with all of our adult issues? Do they just work better when you aim them at kids?
I think the answer to that is you got to go back to Siegel and Schuster and their first few issues of Superman. Mm-hmm. And it's for kids, but there's a lot of adult themes in there. I mean, it's basically he's battling gangsters and, corrupt people and stuff. Zack Snyder's films are kind of a callback. It's a callback to the golden age. That's what I love about Snyder's movies. It gets back to the heart of, what Superman is, which is not Christopher Reeve, which I love Christopher Reeve's Superman, but that's not the definitive Superman. It never has been.
Times have changed from the 70s and 80s. The world is different so Superman should be different.
Or the big problem is the world is not different. We're just paying attention to it differently.
Yeah, so maybe. I think it needs to be a mix. I think kids are dumbed down too much nowadays, and you should be able to put, some things in there that are adult oriented, but still make it for kids. And the reason why it's not done is because, quite frankly, there's too much studio interference, and there's not enough good writing, and there's not enough good editing, and it shows up, especially in the MCU. In my opinion.
I mean, my answer to that is obviously it's better when you have a variety, and everybody wants everything to be very similar now. I've said multiple times on Twitter, and people tend to agree with me, is I loved the MCU and DC separately because DC felt like it took place in our world.
Correct.
Marvel feels like it takes place in the comic book world, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
It feels like a comic book because it is a comic book. The civilians are never really in that much danger. The heroes are always on their own to do everything. Snyder put these movies in our world. How would we respond to these events and these characters? Yep. How would this happen? And the smallest thing shows that it's our world. Is that the military responds in Snyder's movies, and they never make an appearance in the Marvel movies.
Right. He took Nolan's template and ran with it and made it better. So I loved the MCU a whole lot more when it was different than what DC was doing, because I had the more adult-oriented DC. I could see myself in these DC characters, and I could see that this world around them was very accurate, and I loved seeing how these characters reacted to what would happen today. When I turned around to Marvel, I got to see fun characters that were exactly like they were on the comic book page, and lived in a comic book world where regular people aren't the main focus. The world isn't the focus. The heroes are the focus. Mm-hmm. And they can solve every problem because they're the superheroes. And DC was different than that. And now with Aquaman and with Shazam, I feel we're going to that approach that the heroes are just enough to do it, that nothing else is necessary. Yeah, maybe. They definitely had. Well, they had to change their tone. I mean, they had to. I mean, I wish they had stuck to their guns, but the box office was gonna be hurt. I mean, I don't even know if Nolan's Batman movies, if they were released now, would have the same kind of reception or reaction. I don't know that
the Lord
they'd be criticized for being too dark and glum and serious.
I think they really would. I think they would.
That's exactly the point that I'm trying to get to. Are we getting back to see? And Heyward's probably with me. I'm not sure how old Brandon and James are, but Heyward sounds like he's closer to my age range. And I remember going through that time period where you were dealing with the whole, comic books are for kids, comic books for kids, comic books for kids. And you watched this growth happen in the 80s that was happening. Basically, it was weird because it was happening in the comics, but no place else. The comics were mature, but every place else it was action figures and cartoons, and they were all very squarely aimed towards kids. And it didn't feel like until like the middle of the 90s and then started to get into the 2000s that the movies started to catch up. And it feels like we're very quickly kind of reversing course on that because somebody at some point is getting scared of it.
People don't remember
around the time they killed Superman in the comic books.
Yeah,
that was the darkest moment in comics, pretty much.
The real turn happened with that, and also the death in the family when Robin was voted, to be killed off. Mm-hmm. But Tim Burton's Batman is the thing that broke the wall.
Yep.
Yeah. It broke the wall. Now, we look at that now, and it's like, okay, well, it's kind of, not camp. I wouldn't call it campy, but dark comedy.
It's kooky.
But back then, it was considered groundbreaking, and a lot of critics didn't like it. A lot of critics did not like it.
It's amazing. It's amazing how quickly our history gets kind of like paved over, and we kind of like build a new history on top of it, because you're absolutely right. There were a lot of people. There was a video that was just circulating not too long ago where somebody had resurrected an old some talk show or something like that, where they were talking to like now the world's youngest film reviewer. They were talking about Batman Returns, and I don't know how many people remember when Batman Returns came out, how much people flipped the fuck out. Oh my
gosh. Yeah. I mean, it was like McDonald's was freaking out because they were sponsoring this movie.
And they hadn't said they had produced all this merchandise. And they hadn't seen a frame of film.
Yeah. I mean, Tim Burton took it to a next level in that one. And then it got shut down again. It got shut down. And then you ended up with Batman Forever, which is very mediocre. Goofy. And that's when Warner Brothers really started like interfering. It's like, well, we got to sell toys. We got to market this to children. And so
it seems to be this cycle that they go through. You go back to like Heyward mentioned, you go back to the original Golden Age books. You look at the original Superman and the original Batman books, which were the first ones. It was 38, 39. Those were the beginnings of it. I mean, Captain Marvel debuted in 1940. And Captain Marvel was a very big, because it wasn't an auteur project, it was an editorial project. They had a very specific focus on what they were doing, and they knew the audience that they wanted to go for. And the fact that it's kind of like the MCU is now, the fact that
that's exactly right.
The fact that they targeted an audience and they were successful with it forced everybody else to kind of change and kind of do the same thing. But we go through this thing. It seems like every 10 or so years. We started out with the Golden Age. It was a little bit dark. It got really kid friendly up through the 50s and then through the 60s. Right. And then the Marvel comics hit in the middle of the 60s, and DC started to follow suit. So the 70s got darker. Then there was the merchandising wars in the 80s where it got kind of like lighter again, and then it started to get darker. We seem to go through this like wave pattern of up and down, this push and pull between, do we want these characters to grow up and it seems like it's always, you have a generation of kids who want the characters to be older, and then when they get older and have kids, they're like, well, I want my kids to be able to play with these toys too, but now they're all too grown up.
Well, the beauty of the 80s comics was this, aside from Frank Miller, is that you could make stuff for kids, but it had adult themes in it. Mm-hmm. And even Superman the animated series and Batman the animated series are like this too. And it takes talent to be able to do that, and it takes guts to say this is the way we're going to do it. We're going back to the way it was, with the Golden Age templates here, and update it, but still stick to the source material and the heart of what the characters are. And if you do that, you can be very successful at it. But nobody wants to do that, and when you get a guy like Zack Snyder who wants to do that, and even kind of reconstruct it a little bit, mm-hmm. and take people on a journey of creativity that, is an amalgam of a lot of different comics put together to do something creative, and he's going to restore it and make it good by the end of the journey. Nobody will take that risk anymore. And it's just, so you end up with the MCU, which is, we got to have jokes in the middle of a fight for your life or something.
Well, somebody put out a tweet today. Do you remember the time Warner Brothers gave Christopher Nolan $250 million to make a 3-hour Batman movie with 10 minutes of Batman? Right? Yeah. That was just in 2012.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, here's the weird thing though. This was 2012, and he did that, and it got kind of mixed results, but I think overall people thought it did really well. They did more or less the same thing in Iron Man 3, and I remember people being very upset. It's like, you're going to have an Iron Man movie, there's basically no Iron Man in it.
Yeah, but the difference is the tone. The MCU has tonal conflicts. And one of the things I appreciated about Shazam is it didn't have like tone conflicts. I didn't think at all. When it was with the kids, it was funny.
Yep.
Towards the end in the third act, it kind of fell apart a little bit, and there was jokes, when they were fighting or something.
Yeah,
but for the most part, it was clearly marked out, and the villain was dark, and it was scary when it was scary, and when it was with the kids, it was natural humor, and it was funny. It was like funny, not like MCU humor, which is like, boy, that was a dud. Why did they write that stupid joke in there? It wasn't even funny. So. And they managed the tones very well, like in Monster Squad or Ghostbusters or some of these, older movies, the Amblin movies, Gremlins, things like this, Goonies, that mapped out tones very well. Mm-hmm. And it's not a movie that conflicts with tone. And as long as it doesn't have, conflict problems as far as different tones, I have no issues with it. But the MCU has major issues with that, and it drives me nuts. Plus the sloppy editing and cinematography.
My issue is its mass production.
Yes.
And it's not even their fault. I commend Disney for finding what sells a ton and exploiting it. That is their job. That's why they make the big bucks. So
that's what a corporation does.
Good for them for finding it out. The problem is the culture they've built around it is every project has to be made for every person.
Exactly.
And what these younger kids don't understand is if this isn't the Superman for me or this isn't the Shazam for me, I can go to CW and watch Supergirl with the Superman there. I can go to the comics. I can watch the animated shows, animated movies, and I can get the Superman I want because it's 2019.
Right.
Superman is everywhere. But they don't do that. They say, no, the movie version has to be exactly the way I fucking want it to.
Yeah, or I'm ridiculous,
going to,
man.
Well, this is also this thought process.
Here's the other thing, too. Let me just say this one thing. Here's the other thing, too. It's not fair, and it's just people don't look at it. There's been one actor to play Iron Man, 2 actors to play, 3 actors to play Captain America. There's been tons of guys to play Superman. I mean, you got to be creative with this, man. If you keep putting the same stuff on the screen, it's going to get stale, it's going to get old, and it's just you're not going to have that problem with Aquaman or Shazam, but you do that with Superman or Batman.
The reason why Marvel has succeeded, DC has nostalgia. We've had great Superman movies, we had great Batman movies. Marvel didn't have any of that. Marvel movies have sucked until 2008. There's been little gems here and there. I love the Thomas Jane Punisher. It's corny, but he's great as the Punisher. But for the most part, they didn't have good comic book movies. So they didn't have anything they had to go up against except Spider-Man. And guess what? Spider-Man has the same issue that we have as Superman fans.
That's right.
That's true.
People can't let go of Raimi's Spider-Man and move on to the new one.
Well, I don't want to I don't want to do Raimi's Spider-Man, but I want to do Steve Ditko's Spider-Man and retain his elements. You know what I'm saying? And
absolutely.
To me, when you got Peter Parker that's Tony Stark's pseudo ward, you can't do that, man, with Spider-Man. And it's just, it won't work, man. It won't work.
The problem is it is working, and the kids love it. And it is what it is. But again, we're talking about a culture that the new fans that didn't grow up with the Raimi Spider-Man movies hate the Raimi Spider-Man movies, and they love Tom Holland because that's all they've ever known.
But the shame of it is Spider-Man needs to be independent, man.
Sure, 100%.
Eventually, it's going to fall apart. You can't go this route, and they know that.
But that's why we're having issues with Superman. And Superman.
But it's also a money issue because this is a way that Sony is covering the MCU and Sony are covering themselves because Sony can pull Spider-Man at any point in time. And once they if Morbius is a success and all this other stuff that they're going to do is a success, they could pull Spider-Man at any time and say, see ya.
Disney can just buy Sony.
Well, I don't think that's going to happen because of antitrust laws. So,
all right. I mean, wow.
So we're way off the reservation.
We're way off topic here.
Sorry about that.
All right. This is a couple of things left here. Okay. So we know this movie's going to get a sequel. That's in the bag at this point. Is there anything that you like after having seen this, either from your knowledge of the character or expanding on something that was in this movie, is there anything that you want to see in a sequel? James, why don't you kick us off there?
Because I told you that my knowledge about the fucking character is limited, I'll just be like, get The Rock in there, give me some Black Adam versus Shazam. Absolutely. and maybe bring in the more epic mythological aspects of the character to fruition.
Sure.
Honestly, like that's all I can really say, because like I said, my experience with the character is relegated to, knowing who he is, a couple of video games, a couple of times watching cartoons and stuff like that. So that's about it.
All right. Well, what do you think, Brando? Is there anything that you want to, anything in specific that you want to see, or anything that you hope that they expand on in the next one?
So just like he said, I'd like to see more mythology. I'd like to see the bigger picture over everything, and I think they'll expand on that a bit. I'd like to see it develop its own style. Again, when I made the comment about it being like a Nickelodeon movie, it's because it's just kind of bland. There's nothing visually interesting about it. I'd like to see just a little bit more style brought to it. Sure. That gave it its own visual identity. This didn't look like anything.
And yeah, I kind of agree with that.
It's just the costume was bright red. The costume was, it just didn't look like they ever went in and did any kind of color grading. Of course, I'd like to see at least one good scene of Superman being a mentor to him, even if it's just one moment.
Really
even if
it's idea.
Like that short animated movie of Shazam and Black Adam. Even if it's just those two interacting before Black Adam comes in and beats the living crap out of Superman, and Shazam is forced to learn out of his own fear, I'd love to see Superman take on at least a small mentoring role and show him not only how to be a grown up, how to be a man, but how to be a hero.
Okay. Yeah, because he's learned from his mistakes. Yeah, too. That's a good point, man. That's a good point.
All right. Well, Heyward, why don't you get into it?
I would like to see more of a return to. You can't do wackiness of the golden age of Captain Marvel because, man, it is off the charts like fantasy. But I would like to see a kid turning into an adult superhero, and I think that'll partially happen because Billy Batson's going to get older.
Right.
But I would like to see kind of a more of a discrepancy and more of a distinction between Billy Batson and Shazam in a good way. Like, he's more of an adult. He's more secure in himself.
Sure.
He is more confident in what he's doing, and not necessarily just go out of that right out of the gate, but see it grow and develop in the sequel. But I'm not sure how they're going to do that because, I'm saying, they introduced the Shazam family for a reason, and I don't think the next movie is just going to be about Billy Batson.
Yeah, it really can't.
So, do you think they missed the mark by embracing the more? Because this is something that I think a lot of people who don't know the character very well aren't really going to grasp. Captain Marvel originally was not just Billy Batson grown up. Billy Batson and Captain Marvel were two completely separate entities.
That's correct.
This was more like Ultraman. This was like, I'm a person, existing in the world, and in order for this superpower character to enter the world, he and I have to switch places. So I leave this dimension and he comes in. And which is, by the way, something that once Captain Marvel, I think it was about the time Captain Marvel started, Shazam started reprinting or started publishing in DC Comics. That's when they started to do with the Marvel Comics version of Captain Marvel. They started to do that with Captain Marvel and the Rick Jones character. All of a sudden, Marvel, the original, their version of Captain Marvel couldn't exist in our world. You had to switch places with Rick Jones. So it kind of became the classic Captain Marvel thing. I think they were doing that just to kind of like poke a finger in DC's eye over the whole thing. Do you think they missed out on a unique opportunity, or do you think they were so dedicated to this, we're going to do big with superpowers, that they just like went for it and kind of boxed themselves in a little bit?
I would have preferred the boy becoming Superman. That to me, that's the golden age thing. It's a young boy And then when he says Shazam, he turns into Superman, with a magical aura around him, that kind of thing.
And a fly disco cape.
Right, exactly. But, and to me, the costume should have been more Golden Age. That's just my opinion. But at any rate, I do think that I think that the best way to handle that is to let him grow into that. Mm-hmm. But Sandberg's got a real challenge on his hands because he's introduced the Shazam family. It'll be interesting to see, does he go with that Shazam family, and is he getting pressure to develop the female characters more, or is he going to just stick more with Billy Batson? But he can do it because he switched gears in so many different ways in this movie. And it flowed, man. It flowed. And that is not an easy thing to do. I do think
that introducing the family in this was a bit rushed. The Shazam family, obviously not his foster family. I really enjoyed that. But he wasn't allowed to become his own character and learn his own lessons before he had to invite the entire family in to help.
I've heard that argument. I've heard that argument, and I don't agree with it. And I'll tell you why. It's because that's the key to Batson's development. Is all of a sudden he realizes he has a family and he can't fight this guy on his own, and he needs his brothers and sisters to help him.
Yeah, but could you
I also think that they just did that. I also think they just did that because this was their shot. And if this movie flopped, you'd never see the Shazam family in it ever. I mean, like really flopped. I'm talking about Green Lantern flopped or Catwoman flopped, So, which was never going to happen because it's a superhero movie. But
I would have liked to see them hint or even just flat out say at the end somehow in a cool way that, I figured out exactly what this is and I can turn my entire family into heroes as well. And then set that up that's the sequel. I mean, that's the perfect sequel is my family can be like me.
I can see where you could go that route.
I could definitely see that could have been like
the way that they wrote
the last scene of the movie. Actually, after they've already
the way that they wrote the movie is there was no way out because he was a coward in the movie. So, and also that proved that he was, kind of strangely just humble. He was humble. But he was running from who he is as a person, and Shazam was a mask for him. And once this mask was ripped off by Savannah, he realized the mask is not going to work anymore. And that's what foster kids do is when they encounter that mask, they run away. And so they set up the writing all in the foster care human interest story. So you had no choice but to bring the Shazam family in. There was no other way around it.
I can see that. I can see. All right, guys. Final impressions. What's something that the movie left you with that you're still kind of rumbling over? Heyward, why don't you start us off?
It left me with this whole idea that, which is kind of a theme actually in all the DC films, that we all have grief and loss in our lives. And how do we handle it? What are we, how are we dealing with the grief and loss, the hardships that we've went through in our lives? And I feel like that this movie really hit on it very strongly. I mean, they all do, but this one hit on it very strongly in regards to foster kids and the plight that they go through, and the fact that they, have to overcome so much adversity in their lives as far as insecurity and whatnot. And that's what really resonated with me about the movie. The other thing that resonated with me about it that I was totally, I don't know why I was shocked by this, but I shouldn't be, but it was very dark and scary. I mean, I thought it was a dark and scary movie in lots of parts. And that resonated with me that it did a good job of managing tones and trying to, the villain was a villain, man. I mean, when you kill your brother and your father and you command demons and they eat people's heads, I mean, I'm sorry guys, but this is darker. You know what I'm saying? This is the darkest DC Films movie there is. I mean, I don't mean in terms of psychology and whatnot, but in terms of horror, I mean, this made Suicide Squad look like like daycare or something as far as the darkness. So, I mean, to me, that's what really resonated with me. And to me, Sandberg succeeded. This is not Sandberg's best movie. Annabelle Creation was better, but he got it done. He got this done and it was the perfect storm. And the movie is going to be a success, whether it hits 500 or 600 billion. I don't know, or beyond. Probably not because of all the competition, but I think it's going to hit at least 500 probably. And that's a success for a character that has not really had a TV series of his own since 1981, and that was animated.
That's true.
So,
that's true. All right, James, what about you? What are you still chewing on, if anything?
I know I haven't talked a lot during this podcast just because I don't know, the movie didn't really speak too much to me overall, but I will leave it with that. Forget who it was, but saying that the movie felt like an Amblin movie, maybe not necessarily an Amblin movie, but really just a kids movie from the 80s where they weren't a way to shy away from like the scary stuff like you guys were talking about, right? You have this lady touch a door and she literally pulls a fucking Indiana Jones and, melts and withers away. And I'm like, that's sort of fucking awful. And then, you have, like you said, you have the 7 deadly sins, and that was
straight up Raimi to me. Straight up Raimi.
Well, I know you're thinking about what you call it there, Drag Me to Hell, right?
Yeah.
But if you think about it, you have the guys opening up the Ark of the Covenant, or the guy drinking from the wrong chalice, withering away, and stuff like that. So it just reminded me.
Amblin, man. It is definitely Amblin. There's no doubt about that.
And they weren't scared of designing actual scary monsters when it came to the 7 deadly sins, right? Like they genuinely look sort of terrifying looking, and I could imagine any other movie nowadays would be like, well, can you soften up the design a bit? Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
So
sure.
And like you said, that meeting where they're eating everybody, and then they have this. I felt like it was an homage to The Mist, where you have the security guard outside approaching the fogged up walls, and then you see the bodies hitting, the glass, just like it's sort of like the grocery store.
The glass. Let the bodies hit the. Oh.
And then you just have the tentacles and whatever, just pulling them apart and all that stuff. So I really like the fact that it felt like an 80s kids movie, where they weren't afraid of scaring the kids, as opposed to nowadays where, everything is, can't scare them too much. So.
Yeah, and
that's all I really have to say.
Doctor Strange, if you could contrast this movie with Doctor Strange, this movie is scarier than Doctor Strange. I mean, Doctor Strange is not scary at all, and it should be scary. It should be, but it's not, because Disney and the MCU doesn't have the guts to make a movie like that.
Yeah.
So.
All right, well, what do you think, Brandon? What's your final impressions?
I was left with a pretty bad taste in my mouth, but ultimately, I wish I could find better balance. That's all I want is
good point.
Is a better balance in DC. There shouldn't be these stark contrasts where some fans are left out, wondering why they were betrayed. I'm not too small or too big to say that I probably would have liked this movie more if the original DCEU was still going, because this is the replacement. This isn't what was happening next to it. This is not part of the same universe. This is what we're getting in place of what was there. Mm-hmm. So there is a negative side to that I am carrying into the movie, no matter how much I'm trying not to, is I know what we could have gotten and what we were getting, and now what we are getting, and those aren't on the same level to me. I think this kind of movie to contrast Lois Lane being killed or Batman being killed makes a lot of sense. To balance out that weight. And I hope that I am wrong, and I hope that the next few movies that come out aren't completely joyless. I hope they come out. I love the first Wonder Woman, so I hope the next one is good, but I don't have faith that it will be. Joker, I think, will be. But
obviously.
I don't know on Birds of Prey. It's going to be rated R. That doesn't mean anything.
Guys, I'll be honest with you. I am not excited about Birds of Prey. I mean, I like Harley Quinn, but I am not.
I'm indifferent. I kind of just don't care.
So
I'm not excited.
I'm going to support it. I'm going to support it, but it's like
I'm not on boycott level. I'm on, if it looks good, I'll probably go see it, but I'm not going to buy 5 tickets in advance like I did for Man of Steel. Or even Justice League. I had already bought the next 3 days worth of tickets when I walked out of IMAX on day one, saying "fuck."
Yeah.
I already had my tickets bought to go see it again, and I live 45 minutes from the IMAX, so I knew that I was going to have to do something.
I think you make a good point, Brandon. It's something I've tried to impress upon people too. Just because something is rated R doesn't mean that it's going to be serious or mature.
Think it's gonna be rated R.
Deadpool
rated PG-13 when it's all said and
Deadpool
done.
movies are both rated R, and I don't think anybody is calling those serious or mature films because they're not supposed to be.
Yeah.
No. So, all right. Well, this has been an experience with all of you guys. If you have any contacts or anything like that, why don't you go ahead and drop them? Hayward, you want to drop someone your Twitter handle?
Yeah, it's H Watford at H Watford is what it is. So
all right, James.
HWATFORD.
There you go.
My name. It's that simple.
There you go. All right, James, hit him up with it.
Absolutely. My Twitter account is Jack Burton is back -TFX podcast, and you can find me at mass_critical. That's MAS_critical CRITICAL.
All right, Brandon, you're next. Go ahead, toss it out there.
I go by my real name on there. It's Brandon Valenza, and at _meatball_84.
All right.
I'm Italian, so I got to roll with that.
Hey, all right.
Hey.
All right, you can find me on Twitter at only_Gray. That's GREY. You can also find my blog at notthepopularopinion.wordpress.com. This was really an interesting conversation. I know we didn't exactly stay on the Shazam topic, but I think we hit on a lot of really interesting things, and I think we touched upon a lot of subjects that are really resonating right now within the community of fans for these movies in specific, the DC films and in comic book films. I hope that out there in the world that you guys have found something to chew on and some conversation that you can start up amongst yourselves. We're always going to be here for you. We are the Film Exiles. We want to thank you for joining us. Everybody, say your goodbyes and let's get the hell out of here.
Take it easy, everybody.
Have a good one.
Later, everybody.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen. I have been Gray. Thank you very much for joining us. Goodbye.